She said, "If you cannot handle my world, go home," in front of her influencer friends on a sponsored trip to Maui. So, I did. I packed my bag at 4 o'clock in the morning and caught the first flight back to San Diego while she was still asleep. That was 6 weeks ago. And I am watching my ex-girlfriend's entire career collapse in real time because of what happened next. My name is Aiden Hale, 35, independent scent photographer. And until 7 weeks ago, I spent 3 years trying to keep up with a woman whose world revolved around validation, lighting, and edits smoother than her apologies. For the first year, being with her felt like stepping into a dream, traveling across islands, capturing scent notes, drifting through the air, waking up to ocean wind and campaigns and collaborations. But slowly, without noticing, I became less like her partner and more like a supporting actor in a long, never-ending commercial. She used to ask my opinion about everything: palettes, concepts, storyboards. Then she stopped asking. She simply handed me her camera and expected me to anticipate what she needed before she even formed the thought. 12 takes of the same perfume bottle swirling in sunlight. 20 variations of her turning her chin at the perfect angle. If I suggested we put the camera down to breathe, to inhale the scent of the orchids around us instead of manufacturing another version of spontaneity, she would stiffen and remind me we were building something together. But we weren't building. I was holding the foundation while she kept climbing. The trip that broke us was sponsored by one of the largest fragrance houses in the world. 6 influencers were invited to Oahu for a week of scent-focused events: orchid greenhouses, bespoke blending sessions, sunrise shoots meant to capture natural essence. Partners could join. I wasn't excited, but I told myself it might be a reset, a chance to remember why we started. The first day was all branding, introductions, polished smiles, perfectly staged, candid moments. The second day is where everything unraveled. We had gone to an isolated bay at dawn. Mist clung to the water. Orchids heavy with dew perfumed the wind. The company had assigned a liaison named Dorian Vale. Mid-20s, charismatic, the type who introduced himself using both his name and his follow account. And like most people in Selena's orbit, he gravitated toward her immediately by noon. I was sitting under a jasmine tree, editing the morning shots on my laptop, trying to ignore the growing ache in my chest. I heard Selena laughing, that specific forced laugh she used when she wanted the whole room, or in this case, the whole beach, to turn toward her. I looked up. Dorian stood beside her, holding a bottle of high-end shimmer oil the brand was promoting. He leaned in too close. She tilted her head back like she was performing intimacy rather than experiencing it. Something tightened behind my ribs. Then she shouted, loud enough to carry across the sand, "Dorian, can you help me with this? Aiden gets so weird about skin oil." People laughed, soft, unsure, uncomfortable. My ears burned. I didn't move, didn't speak. I kept staring at my laptop screen, even though the image had long blurred. I felt stripped open, exposed in a way I couldn't explain. Then she turned toward me with a smirk, sharpened by attention, and said, even louder, "Babe, if you're jealous, just go home." Silence swallowed the space between us. Even the waves seemed to hush. Someone giggled, but it was thin, fragile. Dorian looked away, half grinning, half ashamed. Every eye shifted to me, waiting for me to prove her point, to become the insecure man. She always accused me of being whenever she crossed a line. Instead, I closed my laptop. I stood up, wiped the sand off my hands, and walked past her without a word. My heartbeat was loud enough to drown out her voice, calling after me. "Oh my God, I'm kidding, Aiden, she said. But there was that defensive edge, the tone of someone who knows they had gone too far but refuses to admit it. I didn't look back. I walked all the way to the resort. My breaths uneven, my chest hollow. I spent that afternoon sitting alone in our hotel room, staring at the beige wall while the scent of her perfumes lingered in the air, cloying and heavy. My phone buzzed. Messages in the group chat. Probably her spinning the story to protect her image. I couldn't bring myself to check. She came back at 6, irritated, complaining that my disappearance embarrassed her in front of people important to her brand. Not once did she ask if I was okay. She was concerned only about optics, about what my silence cost her when she left for dinner without even turning to see whether I wanted to join. Something inside me finally exhaled. For the first time in a long time, I felt something like clarity roar, frightening but real. In that quiet room, with the soft hum of the air conditioner and her ring light still glowing near the window, I opened my laptop and stared at the earliest flight home. 5 a.m., my finger hovered over the purchase button. It felt dramatic, even cowardly. But the truth was simpler. I wasn't leaving a relationship. I was leaving a stage. So, I bought the ticket at 3:40 a.m. While the island slept, I packed my bags in silence. I wrote her a note on the hotel stationery. You told me to go home. I'm just listening. Then I walked out before the sun rose, the hallway empty, the scent of her perfumes clinging to my clothes like the last reminder of a life I no longer wanted to perform. The airport was still half asleep when I arrived, fluorescent lights humming, floors freshly mopped, the faint scent of brewed coffee drifting from a kiosk that hadn't even opened its shutters yet. My body felt hollow from the night, like my bones were filled with cold air instead of anything solid. I moved on autopilot. Check in, security gate. No thoughts, just motion. Everything inside me was a slow echo. When the plane lifted off, the island shrinking below me, I didn't feel relief. Just a dull ache somewhere in my chest that pulsed every few breaths. I told myself it would fade once I landed back in Los Angeles. Once the distance between us was more than ocean and clouds, it would be clarity. It would be peace. But clarity didn't come. And peace. Peace was a rumor. I turned off my phone during the flight. I couldn't bear to see her messages she'd sent any at all. I imagined her waking to find the note. Would she be shocked, angry, embarrassed? Or maybe she'd twist the story into something sympathetic for her audience. Her partner had a mental health moment she was holding. Space, she was navigating challenges with grace. She was good at that. Good at turning reality into something digestible, palatable, marketable. 3 hours later, when we landed, I turned my phone back on. I watched the notifications light up like sparks from a fire. 23 missed calls, 40-2 messages, 3 voice notes, and, of course, the group chat buzzing with confusion. For a moment, I just held the phone in my hand, staring at the screen until the text bled into white. My thumb trembled once, a tiny quake I hoped no one else noticed. I didn't listen to the voice notes. I didn't open the messages. I didn't answer the calls. I just blocked her. Not out of anger, if anything. The anger had finally drained away. What remained was exhaustion. A deep, weary understanding that if I gave her even one opening, I would be pulled right back into orbit around her, into the gravity of her world where every conversation ended with me apologizing for asking to be seen. I stepped into the cold morning outside LAX, the air sharp with city exhaust. It grounded me in a way I didn't expect. I called an Uber. The driver didn't speak, and I was grateful. I watched the city roll past, blurred and muted behind the fog on the window. Palm trees bending in the wind, billboards changing perfumes and watches and films. Whole worlds passing by while mine felt like it had frozen into something small and trembling. When I finally got home, our shared apartment, it hit me that everything inside still smelled like her: vanilla, amber, white musk, and citrus peel. A whole library of bottles she'd collected, reviewed, displayed. Every surface echoed her presence. The workstation in the corner where I edited her photos. The gold shelf where she arranged her PR packages like trophies. The mirror she filmed her transitions in. Even the pillows felt shaped by her absence. The silence was so enormous it hurt. I placed my luggage by the door. Only then did I realize my hands were shaken. For a moment, I just stood there, unsure what the first step of freedom was supposed to look like. People romanticize breakups as opportunities for rebirth. But in reality, standing alone in a room that used to hold two people doesn't feel like rebirth. It feels like being dropped into cold water with no map for how to swim back to land. I walked to the bedroom and stared at the bed, still unmade from the morning we'd left for the trip. The sheets wrinkled, the blanket half folded, two pillows dented from sleep. It felt like walking into a version of myself I didn't recognize anymore. I finally sat down, pressing my palms into my eyes until colors bloomed behind them. I didn't cry. I wasn't even sure tears would help. Instead, I inhaled deeply and realized something strange. Beneath her perfumes, beneath the jasmine diffuser, beneath the scented candles, was the faint trace of the one thing I hadn't felt in months. My own scent, something clean, simple, something not curated for content. It startled me how unfamiliar it felt. I stood up and moved around the apartment, slowly, quietly, opening windows one by one. The morning air slipped in cool, carrying hints of asphalt and eucalyptus. It swept through the rooms like a cleansing, thinning out the layered sweetness of her fragrances. My phone buzzed again. A new number. Probably her, using someone else's phone. I set the device face down on the counter. I opened the bathroom cabinet next. Bottles everywhere, serums, mists, hair oils, body shimmer, curated scents with names like Solar Mist and Velvet Dawn, all arranged perfectly by her. I stared at them, wondering how something so pretty could feel so suffocating. For a long moment, I didn't move. Then I closed the cabinet. I walked back into the living room, breathing a little easier, and that's when my laptop pinged. A new email. The subject line caught my eye. Aiden Hale, inquiry for collaboration. I frowned. Not from her. Not from the brand we'd just worked with. From someone I didn't recognize. Mira Enholm, editor of a fragrance arts publication. The email preview showed only one line. Your sunrise photographs from Oahu were extraordinary. I'd like to discuss a feature on your work independent from any influencer campaigns. My heart paused. Then it dropped, in a strangely soft way, independent. A word that felt like oxygen. I clicked the email open, hands steadying as I read dot with each sentence. I felt it the smallest flicker of something warm returning. Something I thought I had lost months ago. The part of me that created not for someone else's image, but because the world smelled beautiful and I wanted to capture it for the first time in a long time. The future didn't feel like a script someone else handed me. It felt like something I could write. The following days moved slowly, like the transition between tides. I avoided social media. I slept later and later, letting the city's rhythm set me free instead of keeping pace with someone else's posts. The apartment felt emptier, yet the emptiness was not the hollowness of absence, it was the echo of possibilities. I kept the email from Myra Denholm open in a browser tab. I didn't respond immediately. I sat with it. The sun poured through the windows each morning now, unfiltered by ring lights or stage setups. I made coffee on the balcony, the wind carrying distant sirens and the hum of freeway traffic. The scent of its roasted beans, warm metal, sea air felt unmanufactured and real. Months ago, I wouldn't have noticed. I would have jumped up to frame the moment, label it, post it. Now I waited, watched, and breathed. I thought about Selena Marin, not with bitterness. Not really. I thought about her in the way one thinks about a storm you survived. You don't dread the memory, but you know the sky changed afterward. One afternoon, I received a message from one of the other influencers who'd been on the trip, Qley. She said, "I'm sorry for what happened. I see it now. You didn't deserve to be the punchline." Later, she sent screenshots from the group chat. The way Selena had dismissed me. The way Dorian had responded with laughing emojis. The way others had stayed silent. I read them in quiet moments, staring at the wall. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Those messages were for me. The brand deal that Selena had lost rumors spread within the influencer community. One day I opened Instagram. Her account flickered like a ghost. Posts deleted, stories disabled, the follower count sputtering down by thousands. I felt a flicker of something, not victory, but sorrow. Because I knew what it felt like to depend on applause. I knew how fragile that world was. And yet, I didn't feel relief at her failure. I felt something more like relief at my escape. My life was no longer tangled in her spotlight. A month later, Mira's feature went live. Quiet Waters, The Art of Scent and Silence by Aiden Hale. It wasn't about likes. It wasn't about brands. It was about a still point, a gaze into something untreated and whole. The article included my photograph of early morning light over the Pacific, dew on petals, shadow and reflection. It included a short piece I wrote about abandoning performance and choosing being. Comments rolled in support, yes but more. Then that, recognition of work that sprang from truth, not from a script. Work that felt real. Then came invitations. A gallery in San Diego asked to display part of the series. A podcast reached out. A workshop for people recovering from difficult relationships. They wanted me to lead a retreat. I said yes, because this time I wanted to show up, not as the crew behind someone else's content, but as someone whose story mattered. My world shifted quietly. On a hiking trail just outside the city, I met Amy Jensen, a park ranger guiding a twilight walk. She smelled like pine and rain, not filtered light or perfume sample. We talked about landscapes and silence and how sometimes the most beautiful frames are the ones you weren't planning to shoot. When she asked about Selena, I told her I didn't want to go back there. She nodded, simply. No pity, no judgment, just presence. One evening, we walked to the coast at sunset. I set up my camera facing the ocean. Tide low, the sky brushed in gold and amber. I pressed the shutter and stood there, silent. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing the perfect shot for someone else to commend. I was present. That night, I thought about the day Selena told me to go home. How softly the words had landed like a challenge, and how quietly I answered. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just left. In leaving, I found something. The version of me that could breathe when no one was watching. The version of me that wasn't edited for impact, The version of me that knew respect isn't loud respect, is quiet. And when someone can't give it, the healthiest thing you can do is walk away. I don't regret. I don't regret the 3 years. Either they taught me what I will never accept. And I don't regret the fallout. Because it wasn't about punishing her. It was about reclaiming myself. Sometimes I wonder where Selena is now. I heard she moved back to her hometown, changed course, started helping non-profits tell stories content, yes, but not about herself anymore. That may or may not be true, but I hope it is. I hope she learns how to live when there is no audience applauding. My path is still unfolding. My prints hang in a small San Diego gallery. I'm leading weekend workshops for aspiring scent photographers and people rebuilding their lives. I tell them, sometimes the bravest thing isn't staying. It's walking away while you still remember who you were. I don't expect them to clap. But if they thank me quietly, that's enough. And now, when someone asks me what changed, I say, I left because staying would have meant pretending. I was okay with being treated like a prop in someone else's spotlight, and I am done pretending. The sun set the other day and I watched it alone, the sea turning dark, the sky fading to blue, no ring light, no caption, no sponsorship tag, just me and the sound of waves and a camera on a tripod. I pressed the shutter and exhaled, because now I am home, not a place, but a version of myself I can live with, one that doesn't need external validation to know its worth, one that understands that respect is quiet, and when someone can't give it, you simply walk away. And I didn't just walk away from her, I walked toward something real.